Welcome to Life School, Series 2, Bumps and Babies. As I record this today, I am currently 23 weeks and 4 days pregnant with my first baby, which I'm so excited to share I now know is a little girl. I'm still in the process of recording this series, and my plan was to start releasing episodes once I'd finished recording with all my wonderful guests. However, in light of the current global situation with coronavirus, recording for now is on hold. So I've decided to share with you the episodes I've recorded so far over the past couple of months. I know many of us are currently self-isolating at home with lots of time on our hands, so what better time to listen to your favourite podcasts or perhaps discover some new ones? As a first-time mum, pregnancy, birth and babies is a whole new world for me, and I personally want to educate myself as much as I can before my little one arrives. From positive birth stories, information on hypnobirthing, water births, C-sections, baby massage and more, I hope throughout this series I can shed some light on just some of the areas you may be worried about, or even just intrigued about. Thank you to all the incredible birth workers and women who have made this series possible so far, and thank you so much for listening. Welcome to another very special bonus episode of Bumps and Babies, where my guest today is the co-founder and CEO of Mama app, Sumayya Sarwar. During this episode, we discussed motherhood, Sumayya's journey to creating her business Mama app, and her incredible birth in the back of a taxi. Yes, you heard that right. This episode was recorded virtually during lockdown, so apologies in advance if the sound quality isn't 100%. You can find all the links to download the Mama app in the show notes below. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with the wonderful Sumayya. Happy listening! Sumayya, welcome to Life School.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much for being my first international guest. I know you're based in Dubai as well, but you're in the UK right now.
Yes.
So yeah, you're my first overseas guest, and we've managed to get the technology on our side after a few little trial and errors.
Yes, we got there in the end, which is great. And I'm so happy that we are actually managing to record this.
Me too. I'm really excited. And I actually discovered your app recently, and it was through the wonderful Jasmine Collin, who is a hypnobirthing specialist based here. And you did a wonderful Instagram live with her. And I came across your app and I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I can't wait to talk about your business. But I want to talk, because you are a mum, I want to start by talking about your own pregnancy and birth experience.
Sure. So do you want me to start with the pregnancy then?
Yes. Yes, please.
So, like you mentioned, we do live between Dubai and the UK, and we made a decision to have my baby in the UK, so have my daughter in the UK. And so throughout pregnancy and labour and all of that sort of was done in the UK. It was partly because I was actually completing my postgraduate degree. So I'm a trained dentist. And so I was doing a postgraduate degree in dentistry, in implant dentistry to be specific. And so I was actually coming to the sort of end of that, and doing my exam was coming up. And so we decided to sort of have the baby in the UK and then head out to Dubai afterwards. And so my pregnancy and my course all sort of happened in the UK. Pregnancy was, luckily, touch wood, was, and hopefully the next one will be the same, was pretty straightforward for me, in the sense that I didn't have any major pregnancy symptoms as such. So I didn't have sort of the nausea and the vomiting. One thing I did have, though, was sort of really extreme exhaustion in the first trimester, where I would just fall asleep. I would fall asleep in the car. I would fall asleep wherever I could. So that was one thing I felt. And then towards the end of pregnancy, in the third trimester, I had a bit of heartburn. But other than that, not much to report with the pregnancy. I was pretty small in terms of how much I was carrying. I'm quite a small build anyway as a person. So yeah, I think there wasn't much else to say about the pregnancy other than it was fairly straightforward. I carried on with my day-to-day life as normal. Went to the gym, carried on literally as if I wasn't pregnant.
Yeah, I can really relate to the exhaustion. I think I slept for the first 12 weeks.
Yeah, I was pretty much
I was just asleep the whole time. And to the point where I'd message friends and be like, I'm really sorry, I've just been asleep. That's why I haven't replied to you.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I would be waiting for an appointment and I would just fall asleep in the waiting room.
And so everything was pretty smooth and straightforward. And had you thought about what sort of birth you might like to, of course you can't plan for these things, but did you have specific birth preferences?
Yes, so I did a hypnobirthing course and wanted like a natural, as natural as possible birth. I planned for a water birth. Other than that, and I mean, I didn't really have anything specific on whether I wanted to have an epidural or not. I was very much, I'd rather have a natural birth if I can, but if I can't handle it, or if I need to have an epidural, I'm not dead against that either. But it didn't go that way at all. I mean, my labor was completely different to what I thought labor was going to be. So yes, I did plan and I did have birth preferences. I did write a plan, but I didn't. I guess I was warned. Well, not warned, but I was advised by people that I shouldn't really focus too much on how it will go because you can't really plan for it. And so I think I was open to it may not go the way that I planned for it to go.
And how did it go?
So it was a really quick birth. So from start to finish, my labor was about 35 minutes. So it was really, really quick. And to the point where I think, so what I was advised after by the doctor was I probably felt my first contraction when I was in the latent phase. And so I didn't really have a build up to labor or contractions or surges. And when I did feel the first so I had a show, I called, so in the UK, you call the midwife unit and you inform them of what's going on, and they sort of advise you as to whether to go in or whether to stay at home. And when I did call, I sort of remember the midwife saying to me, look, it's just a show. It may be days before you're actually going to actually go into labor. And so I stayed at home, had my breakfast as I normally would. I actually used to walk quite a lot towards the end of pregnancy. So I was walking sort of for 3 or 4 miles. And so I put my headphones on. I actually had a podcast that I was listening to, and I was planning, like I was dressed and planning to go out for a walk. And then suddenly I felt a surge. And obviously this was the first surge I felt. And you're informed that you get this sort of build-up of surges. And so I didn't have any build-up of surges. I just had this was my first surge, and it was quite intense. And so I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is the first one. This is just the start. But it just happened so quickly. So I felt the second one pretty much a couple of minutes later. And at the time, I didn't realize that they were happening so close together, but they were pretty intense, so my husband was sleeping and I went to wake him and I said to him, look, I'm feeling something's going to happen. And so they were kind of happening. I had my hospital bag packed, so we were getting that together. I asked him to put the TENS machine on. I actually ran the bath because I thought, well, get into the bath because this is what you're supposed to do, just to help sort of ease the discomfort. And I ran the bath, but I never actually got in because the contractions were just happening so quickly. We were so bad at timing them, by the way. Like I would time one. So my phone was running with the timer app. I would time one and then I would ask my husband to time the next, and then we'd miss the next one. So we didn't really know how close to like giving birth I was because we were just so bad at timing them. We had a doula booked. So my husband actually called the doula and she heard me in the background and asked him to take me to the hospital. She's the one that said, look, you can't wait around. You need to take her to the hospital. And she later told me it's because she heard me in the background and she could hear that I was actually quite close to giving birth, because apparently the way your surge is on, the way you sound changes through labor.
Yeah, I've heard this. You go into that transition period. And yeah, doulas will be able to, midwives and doulas can tell when this is happening.
Yeah, sure. So then he ordered an Uber and we waited for the Uber to come. My TENS machine was on, it was doing, and I had my hypnobirthing track. So as soon as I felt like the third surge, I put my hypnobirthing tracks on, and I was kind of like in the zone. And then we left, got into the Uber, told that my husband was obviously having a chat with the Uber driver, telling him that I was in labour. We were heading to the hospital to give birth. And it was sort of 7:30 in the morning in London, which means traffic's pretty bad. And when we're in London, we're in central London, which adds, like, obviously the traffic in central London is always pretty bad anyway. And where the flat was to where the hospital is literally a 10-minute journey if there's no traffic. But it took us so long to get there because of the traffic. I literally could feel the baby coming.
Oh, so my goodness.
Yeah, so I said, and this is like, if you ask any woman that's given birth, she'll say that you can just feel the baby coming. You can actually just feel that it's there. And so I said to my husband, I can feel her head. She's coming. He looked and he could see the top of the head. And we were in the back of the taxi at this point. I was like resting against the door. So like my upper body was sort of resting against the side of the door. And my husband looked and the baby was coming. And then like the next surge came and the head was out. So he was holding the head.
Oh my goodness. Are you in excruciating pain at this point, by the way?
No. So I think hypnobirthing really, really does prepare you to... You do experience discomfort, don't get me wrong. It's not like a walk in the park. You do feel like intense, like you do feel the contractions, you feel like discomfort, but I wouldn't say it was excruciating, and I wouldn't say it was really, really painful either. But I don't know.
Pressure.
Yeah, it's just like a really tight squeeze.
And so your baby's head is out in the back of a cab. Did you make it to the hospital?
No, we didn't. So we were still a couple of minutes away from the hospital, but we were in standstill traffic. Like we weren't, the car was not moving. And so my husband was holding the head and he's like saying to me, push the rest of her out. And at this point, I wasn't having there was no surge, there was no contraction. So like I remember this conversation so distinctly. I remember saying to him, we have to wait for the next contraction. And so when the next contraction came, I pushed like again, and then the rest of the body came out. So the umbilical cord was attached, like the placenta was still in, and he was holding the baby. And we literally got to the hospital like 3 or 4 minutes afterwards. So yeah, we actually delivered the baby in the car in the back of an Uber.
Your taxi driver must have just been like, oh my God.
I think he was so shocked. He didn't say a word. Like after the process of from when we gave birth to getting to the hospital, he didn't say anything.
Oh my goodness. And your husband just sounds amazing. It sounds like he stayed really calm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, he's really good under pressure anyway, as just generally as his personality is that way. But I think it just happened so quickly that there was no time to think about anything else. Do you know, a lot of people ask me now that, did you not think about like, oh, what if she's not, like, you know, what if you need like medical care? What if you need a doctor what if she didn't cry? These things just don't cross your mind. It just happens so quickly. You just deal with it.
And so when you got to the hospital, obviously like you're holding her, but you still have the umbilical cord attached. And was it sort of like a mad rush then when you arrived at the hospital? Because I imagine this doesn't happen very often, people arriving with their brand newborn babies in their arms.
No, so the doctor said it, I mean, I remember because we had a conversation afterwards with the sort of the midwives and the doctors, and it doesn't happen often. It has happened in the past. But I think because she was already delivered and she was sort of breathing and we were both fine, there was no sort of urgent rush. So there was an ambulance, like there was a paramedic just stood outside the A&E. And you know what, the A&E doors where the ambulances go in the UK are locked. Like you can't go through the doors. It's like passes only. And so we had to obviously get the paramedic to go inside. And when he came, he went in, got the doctor, and they came out with a stretcher. And No, they didn't really sort of like run in. I mean, there was a team of people that came out. So the doctor came out, a couple of nurses came out, and then they took me in. And obviously they talked about like the placenta coming out, being delivered next, and they cut the umbilical cord, etc. So they did what they needed to. They checked my heart rate, they checked the baby's heart rate, but it didn't feel like it was a rush, if that makes sense.
And how did you feel? Because it sounds like, I mean, you got a beautiful natural birth, a quick one, but how did you feel about because obviously in your mind you have this sort of idea and you fantasize about it for 9 months, or, you know, throughout the course of your pregnancy. How did you feel about the whole thing?
I mean, I think it was just, it didn't really hit me until like later that day. So I think it was a few hours after. So when I was in sort of the A&E part for an hour or so, and then they took me up to the maternity unit, and it's when I was being checked there by a doctor, because I actually had a tear. So when they were checking me there is when it actually hit me, and then I actually started to cry. But until that point, I think I was in this sort of mode of just dealing with it. So at the time, I didn't really think anything. But I didn't look back, and I still don't look back and think, oh, I wish it was different. I really don't wish it was any different. It is what it is. And I'm grateful for the experience that we had. And I think my daughter and my husband, my husband's, I think all children are obviously close to their dads, but I think he's got a slightly special bond because he was the first person to hold her.
I mean, that is one of the most incredible birth stories I've ever heard. That is just, I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for the experience that we had. Honestly, I don't, if I could go back and change it, I don't think I would.
And do you think, I mean, you touched on this, but do you think the hypnobirthing really played a sort of vital part in how you stayed calm and you just trusted your body? Do you think without the hypnobirthing, it might have been a different experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. I 100% believe in hypnobirthing and believe that it really does teach you, it gives you the tools to really deal with the sort of the labor situation, whatever that scenario is for each person, because obviously it is different for different people. But the tools that I learned, and it is a lot of practice, and you do have to dedicate time to learning the tools. But yes, definitely, I do believe that I learned the tools there, and that they did help me through the birth. And actually, even after I'd given birth, I do think that you can take a lot away from hypnobirthing and use those tools afterwards as well.
Yeah, completely. I'm starting my course at the end of this month, and I'm really excited. I mean, I've been listening to an audiobook and listening to some tracks already to prepare myself, but I'm really excited because I have heard that it does help with things like, you know, if you're a really nervous flyer, or, you know, you're nervous before a presentation, the tools you learn can help with sort of day-to-day life things as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think even it has an element of meditation involved, I think. And so I think it really does help with other things other than just sort of labor.
You know what, though, I think, and thank you so much for sharing that story, because that is just honestly one of the most amazing birth stories I've ever heard. But I really hope that I have a nice quick birth. In a way, I think that's amazing. You know, to kind of, because you hear about women, it starts slowly and it builds, and it's meant to as well. It's meant to be a gradual build. But, you know, women that it's sort of, they're in labor for a whole day. And, you know, I'm a very impatient person. I already I can't wait to meet my baby. So for me, I would love a nice quick labor like that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather have a 30-minute birth than, you know, some women are unlucky and they do go on for days sometimes. And yeah, I agree with you. It's better that it's quick, I think, than
I think so
slow.
too. And did you speak to your by the way, did your doula make it to the hospital, or did you call her and say, listen, we've had the baby?
No, so she did leave because when we called her and she asked us to leave to go to the hospital, she was on her way to meet us at the hospital. So she met me right at the end. So by the time she met me, I'd given birth. The umbilical cord was cut. The baby had been sort of dressed. So yeah, it was much later than we'd actually planned.
And did you find out later, or sort of look into, had your contractions started earlier but you just hadn't felt them because they'd been soft, or maybe you have a really high pain threshold, or is it just that it was one of those things that just came on really quickly and sometimes it happens like that?
So I think if I look back and think about like certain situations where I felt something was going on, I do think there was a sort of a process of it building up, but it was just so like I didn't feel the contractions to a point where it would stop me in my tracks. Do you know, I wouldn't, like, I felt things sometimes. So I felt some tightening sometimes, but you do start to feel things like that towards the end. And they tell you about Braxton Hicks, but it was never to a point where I would be doing something and I would have to think, oh, that was intense. What was that? Do you know, I kind of just went on with my day as normal. So I think there was probably a lead up, but I just didn't notice it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is part of the unknown, isn't it, with your first, because you've never put most of us haven't put our bodies through something like this before. So you don't know what your threshold is, how your body's going to react. And that's why you can have preferences and you can invest your time in things like hypnobirthing, but you really don't know how it's going to pan out, do you? You just have no idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think that goes with everything when you sort of go through pregnancy and then labor and then having your child. There really is no planning because you just don't have you don't have control over what's actually going to happen. But one thing I would like to say is that, you know, your body does know what it needs to do. I think I don't have any training on giving birth. But we managed to have a baby in the back of a car, and that's just because your body really does know what it needs to do.
It's just incredible. Absolutely amazing. And so you had your little girl, and how did you become the founder of Mama App? Can you talk us through your journey to creating your business?
Yes. So we'd obviously talked a lot about where we wanted to raise our daughter and what the plans were after she was born. I think every mom or pregnant woman can probably relate to that. You start sort of thinking about where you'll be going afterwards and what you'll be doing afterwards. And so my husband was actually raised in Dubai, and his family are based in Dubai, and they've been there for about 50 years. So they've been there for a really, really long time. And to him, Dubai is home. And so, and having spent we used to spend 5 or 6 months out of the year out there and spend a decent amount of time out there. And so we'd decided that actually we wanted to raise her in Dubai, and that was a place where we wanted to sort of be based. And so when she was 5 months, so we waited till she was about 5 months old, we then head out to Dubai. And this was the first time I was in the city with a baby. So I hadn't obviously been there with a baby before, and this was like a new experience for me because I knew Dubai as being sort of just me and him and being single and not having a baby. But we were finally now with a baby. And, you know, my friend, so I was the first of my friends there that was to have a baby. And so my friends were sort of working and they didn't have children. So it was really hard to sort of arrange to meet them. Having such a young baby, you're restricted by things like bedtime and feeding. So one thing that happened with my daughter is I was breastfeeding when she was 5 months old. I was breastfeeding, and she refused to drink from a bottle. So she wouldn't drink formula from a bottle. She wouldn't drink express milk from a bottle. So just the idea of a bottle was a no. So I couldn't really leave her for longer than a couple of hours with anybody. And so that feeling of like loneliness and that overwhelm was really incredible once I moved out there. And that's what made me realize how important it was to have that community of moms So you're not just having a community of friends, but people that have actually experienced motherhood. And what I really realized was it needed to be easy and accessible, because especially when you're early, having just given birth or having a young baby, you don't really have a lot of time. And so I really wanted it to be easy and accessible, and to be able to make mom friends in a really easy way. And there are some amazing companies out there that sort of plan mummy mornings, and they're incredible. And it's a really good way of meeting other people. But what I found was sometimes the timings were a bit off. So if the baby was napping, sometimes you can't just pick the baby up and go out. If she's unsettled, it was just really difficult to get out. And I remember one time I was really looking forward to going to a mummy morning, and then my daughter hadn't slept very well the night before. So I'd probably slept about 3 hours, and it just didn't feel like going out. So I missed the sort of opportunity of being able to meet other moms and connect with other moms. And that sort of then led me to sort of doing some research and really figuring out what was available to actually meet other moms out in the UAE. And what I realized was there wasn't really anything for just moms. There wasn't anything that was easy and accessible in terms of an app for just moms. There were things for children and ways to meet children, getting play dates and things like that for children. But I wanted something specifically for pregnant women and moms, so that they could just make mom friends. So that's how the idea sort of was born. I did a lot of research, some learning, lots of courses, figured out how to build an app, and got a team together. And then that's how we got on and actually developed the app itself. So that's where it started, and it's now growing.
And I think you've touched on a really amazing point, which isn't spoken about a lot, which is kind of the isolation. Even during pregnancy, if you don't have other pregnant friends, it can be quite lonely, can't it? And you just want that sort of connection with someone who can relate to what you're going through. And I imagine that then continues, once you've had your baby. And like you said, sometimes, you might not feel like venturing out and going to a mama morning, and there are some amazing things on here, but you need that support network and that connection, but that can be really hard to find. It can be a bit like, well, where do I even begin?
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. And that, like you mentioned, the loneliness is really incredible. Like that feeling of loneliness can be really sort of overwhelming. And postpartum depression is a real thing. People do suffer from this. Baby blues is a real thing. And it's really important that we actually do sort of realize that some people do experience these feelings, and having that support network, or having that ability to be able to just reach out to another mom and to just meet, I think could help so many people, so many moms, to just be able to connect. So when I was designing the app, it was really important that I brought that feature into the app. So we have like a community setting, or a community area. So it's like a forum page where moms can sort of connect and meet and talk as a group. So you can ask your questions, share your experiences. But then there's also an aspect in the app where you can actually connect with other moms on a sort of more one-to-one basis. So when you register for the app, you create a profile, and within the connect page, you'll see each mom's profile, and you'll see the moms that are closest to you at the top. But it will also have information, not then the children's names and nothing specific, but you'll see the child's age, you'll see what kind of interests the mom have, so that you can then reach out to the moms that sort of have similar interests to you, maybe have children the same age as yours, and then so you can actually connect more on a sort of one-to-one basis, and you know that that woman is at the exact same stage of their lives as you. So you've got you've got someone to speak to, someone to connect with, and they'll really understand what you're going through, because they're pretty much going through the same thing you are. So it's those little things that I really wanted to make a real thing. So if you're at home and you've had a really sort of rough night and you just want to be able to get out. And at the moment we're dealing with COVID, and so the likelihood is most of us have got our partners at home with us, but most of the time they then have to go back to work pretty quickly after the baby's born, and you're left at home with just this baby and you. And just that adult conversation is, I mean, we all I think pretty much every mother can relate to craving that adult conversation, especially in those early days when you're really sort of focused on just looking after the baby. And I wanted it to be there to be a possibility where you can just get your phone, message a mom who's sort of probably in the same area as you, and arrange to meet for a walk that afternoon. So just to get some fresh air, have a chat. And it's just being able to allow other moms to be able to do things like that, maybe meet for a coffee the next day, and just get to know other people and other moms and actually make friends who hopefully then will be friends for life.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. And I think especially in Dubai, where, you know, for us expats, majority of us don't have family here. So, you know, it's not like your mum's just down the road, you know, or your close friends are, you know, really nearby. You almost need that support even more. You know, you need to build your own little Dubai family or wherever you are. And it's having those adult conversations, but also just having someone, I guess, I feel like when you know, it's like that saying, isn't it? A problem shared is a problem halved. It's like you just sometimes want to get things off your chest, don't you? And feel like, oh, okay. And then most of the time, you know, your friend will be like, oh yeah, no, I had the same thing. And then you're like, oh, I'm not the only one. Okay. You know, it's just having that connection. Like, we crave connection anyway. But to be going through something so specific, you know, it can be hard for your friends that haven't been through it to relate.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're definitely social beings, and having that support and that community is really sort of important as humans. And I agree with you with the fact that just someone else experiencing something similar or knowing that they've had a similar experience makes you feel so much better about the whole thing. It's almost like it disappears because someone else has experienced it, and you know that you're not the only one.
Yeah, completely. And I know from a few mum friends I know who have already had their children, they said it was really lovely to have met a couple of mums who were at the same point, and they had someone to message at 4 a.m.
Absolutely.
You know, when they're doing the middle of the night feeds, and it was nice to have someone, you know, on WhatsApp, and they could send each other, you know, funny voice notes and messages, and just to have a couple of people who are on the same journey as you, that you can share it with.
Exactly, I agree with you. And just knowing that someone else is up in the middle of the night is comforting.
And is this purely focused on the UAE, or is it also for the UK as well?
So it's just a UAE platform at the moment. We will probably expand to the rest of the Middle East, but we're not planning to expand to the UK at the moment.
And are you planning to have sort of physical meetups and events as well? Obviously not during these COVID times, but once we all sort of get back to our new normal, which I hope isn't in the too distant future, are you planning to have some physical events as well?
So I haven't got anything in the sort of pipeline yet, but yes, definitely, there's definitely an opportunity to be able to do sort of physical meetups. When that will be, I'm not sure, but yes, at some point in the future, I'm hoping so.
I mean, yeah, right now it's difficult to plan anything, isn't it? We're all just adapting. And actually, this is why an app like Mama App is perfect, because, you know, we are all going through the same thing. We are all on our lockdown. And even though, you know, things are easing here slightly, especially if you're pregnant, you know, you need to be extra cautious. So connecting with people virtually and online is, I mean, that's the way we're doing things now.
Yeah, I think we actually launched the app a little bit earlier than what we'd originally planned, because, so the social media platform was already running, but the app hadn't been released yet because we were still working on some of the features. And as soon as the lockdown happened, what we realized was the number of women and mums that were sort of talking about anxiety and really struggling with being home all the time. It's a big transition to go from being out and about and being able to do what you want to when you want to then having to stay indoors all the time. And that's why we brought it to the app stores much earlier. Much earlier, about a month earlier than what we'd planned, just so we could bring the platform out so people could start connecting and meeting and virtually meeting and at least getting to know each other.
Time. It's the perfect time for it. And I know you've been talking to a lot of mums during these times. What's one of the biggest takeaways or a few takeaways you've learned from talking to mums about their experience of juggling work and homeschooling and home life? What have you learned from these conversations that you've been having with these mums?
I think every mum is sort of, there's days when it's okay, but then a lot of days when it is really challenging, because if you think, especially having to homeschool as well as having to work and then having to parent, that's 3 different roles in sort of a 24-hour period. And when you're not having time out, it's a really difficult scenario. I think a lot of people have struggled and are still struggling, and it's just trying to find the balance. And I think what I found is people are sort of saying they're having to sort of let something go, if that makes sense. So maybe that work hasn't
to give.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe work isn't priority that day and something else is, or that, the children sometimes may get a bit more screen time that day because they need to do something else. And I think just being easy on yourself. And I think a lot of moms having gone through the process and having the sort of the couple of months that we have been in this situation, I think now, having spoken to a few moms more recently, I'm finding that they're becoming a bit more relaxed with not having to give 100% to everything.
Yeah, and I think maybe initially there was that pressure, even for people without children. There's that pressure to make sure you stay in your routine and to do a home workout and to be cooking and baking and using this time productively. But as the time's gone on longer, and now we know that this is going to go on for a little while, I guess you kind of have to adapt and just take the pressure off and be kind to yourself, because this is such a... I mean, I hate this phrase because it's so overused, but these are unprecedented times, and you need to kind of, just be kind to yourself. And none of us have been through anything like this before, so you don't need to have it all together and have it all figured out straight away, because every day things are developing and changing, aren't they? And we're learning new things. And I think one of the biggest things for me has been to make sure I'm not reading and watching too much to do with the news, because I start to feel quite, and I'm not a naturally anxious person, but I've had a few days where I felt really anxious and worried, and I'm like, I know why, because I'm bombarded by WhatsApp messages, I'm reading things, I'm watching videos, like it's too much. I'm taking in too much information. I need to just cut off from that for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what I really like from what you just said is that you really need to be kind to yourself and just give yourself a break. It's okay that, you can't do everything in one day. And yeah, I agree with you. Just reducing that time, sort of what you consume is really important, to sort of be mindful of what you're actually consuming and what kind of media you're consuming, because that can have a really big impact on your mental health.
Yeah, it really can. And especially when, we're all on WhatsApp groups and you're being sent things in video clips, and it's all with, the right intentions. But sometimes I'll have days where I think I'm not opening that. I don't want to click on that link. I know what I need to know, and I don't need to overwhelm myself with, because a lot of it is scary, and a lot of it is headlines and it's numbers, and it's, I think, especially when you're pregnant, you just need to try and stay as calm and relaxed as possible. Of course, we have to be informed, but I've definitely found that it's really helped shutting off sometimes.
I've done the exact same thing. So I will select what I want to read and see, and then other than that, if it gets sent to me and it's a link, I don't read it. If it's an article that I don't haven't actively gone out to sort of find, then I don't read it. And I think I've been exactly the same way, because it is better for your own mental health to be sort of consuming what you know is worth consuming, and then just having a sort of a deadline on, I'll have a read today for 20 minutes and that's it. It's not going to be something that I do all day.
Exactly, because you can kind of get drawn into this spiral, can't you? If you watch one video and then that leads on to another video, and before you know it, you've spent hours just digesting all this quite negative information. And a lot of which is still at this point, speculation and not based on facts. And I think you do need to be informed, but yeah, you definitely need to be conscious of the effect it's having on you.
Yes.
And your mental health.
Absolutely. And I think with pregnant women, because they're having to go out to hospitals and have appointments, and, I think it's a little bit more daunting in that sense, if you're pregnant and having to sort of go to these appointments. But it is just sort of reminding yourself of what's important. And as long as you're looking after yourself and, following the rules, then there's not much else you can do.
Mm. And what have you learned about yourself during this lockdown period?
That I'm pretty organized. I think I always knew that I was very organized, but one thing that I've learned is that I can, instead of being organized, I think what I'm trying to say is I can prioritize pretty well. So having to still run the app and make sure that all of that's still running on the side, and then the social media is still building and getting the information out there to the moms, because it's really important that we get all the information out to the moms. And then having to look after my daughter as well. Being in the UK, it's just me and my husband and my daughter, so we don't have help here. So yeah, it's just being able to organize my time. So I've been quite surprised as to how much I've managed to get in a day.
You're so active on social media. I love your social media. I love the videos you're putting out, the content. You're super, super active. You're giving so much to the Mama app community.
I think it's just really important to get the information out there. I think if we can help as many moms as possible, then ultimately that's my goal. And, different experts will give different advice, and it may resonate with one mom and not with another. And so I think if we can get all this different information out to the moms, then I'm happy to help as many moms as I can. And that's my goal. So that's the reason why I do it. And it really does purely come from wanting to give. And so it doesn't feel like I'm dedicating lots of time to it, if that actually makes sense.
Well, it sounds like because it's a passion and a sort of mission, you really enjoy it. So therefore, there's an element of it. It doesn't feel like, oh, I've got to give hours to this today. It comes very naturally, and you really enjoy it, and it's a purpose, and that's sort of the best type of work, isn't it? Because it doesn't really feel like work. There's elements, of course, with any kind of job and running a business, which can sort of be the more, menial tasks. But if you're doing something you're really passionate about, then, you could spend 3 hours editing and making a video like I do sometimes, but it just feels like 5 minutes. time just goes,
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's really important, right? Doing something that you really enjoy, and always reminding yourself of the bigger objective. Sometimes, like you mentioned, you can spend 3 hours sometimes editing a video, and that in the moment sometimes can feel like And for you, you just mentioned it doesn't, but for some people it may feel like it's too much, or it's too much time and it's too much effort. But actually, if you remind yourself of the bigger objective, then I think that really brings you back to sort of why you're doing what you're doing.
Completely. And there, that the example I gave of the video is something that I really enjoy doing, but there are other elements where I'm like, oh, okay, I really need to sit down and make myself focus on this. But yeah, because it's part of a bigger picture and it's working towards something, you need to try and stay motivated in those times, because there are going to be elements of, even when it's a passion project or something that you feel is your purpose, there are still things that you've got to do that are like, oh, that's just not my cup of tea, that bit, but I've got to do it because it's it's part of the job. But I think what you're doing by bringing women together, mums together, it's just so important. And there's so many women who really do feel isolated, and just having one friend will make such a difference. Having someone that they can reach out to, and it sounds quite simple, doesn't it? But it's that makes such a difference to someone's life, having that friendship and someone that they can talk to and hopefully stay friends for life with, and their children can be friends. It can start a really sort of, a beautiful lifelong friendship.
I agree with you. And I think sometimes, especially when you're a pretty confident person, we forget that there are people that are a little bit more reserved and a little bit more quiet, and they may find it challenging to just, go and speak to another mom. And so I think with a platform like Mama Emmy, I think part of that was to allow those people to feel comfortable, because it's more of a sort of one-to-one. You can just send a personal message rather than having to ask in a big group setting. So I just wanted it to be sort of inclusive and really sort of non-judgmental, so that they feel comfortable to be able to reach out to somebody else, so that they can connect with somebody else. Because like you say, just having that one friend can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it really can. And I was lucky enough. I was on a Facebook group at the beginning of my pregnancy, and I ended up chatting to a girl. And then we went to an event together, and she brought another girl that she'd met. And then that girl knew another girl. So there were 4 of us, and we decided to set up a WhatsApp group. Mm-hmm. And we're all British expats, all sort of due around the same time. And just having those girls who, we've only managed to all meet up like twice, and then obviously we've been on lockdown, but to be able to, we send messages to each other, we ask each other questions, we're all also facing the reality that our families aren't going to be here when our babies are born. And it's honestly been a bit of a saving grace, I think, just to be able to have. And now I initiated that WhatsApp group because that's my character, but there is a lot of women that aren't, like you said, they're more shy or reserved, and that's not their character. So they need, I need Mama App as well, but they need something that's more, that allows them to have that opportunity. And especially now where you can't go to events and meet people, but just having those girls has really, it's just really helped, on down days, or just general questions. Have you felt this before? What's this? It's I've really been grateful to have them. And you'll find, and one of them has just had their baby, so there's one down, 3 to go.
And you'll find that after you have your babies as well, like those questions will just increase, and you'll have so much more that you want to sort of discuss with each other. And yeah, it's incredible to have that community, like, that the group of friends that you can really sort of talk to and feel comfortable talking to and asking questions, and that they won't judge you, and you'll feel like comfortable asking whatever, and you can talk about whatever you want to, related to pregnancy, birth, and even other things. I'm sure you guys have found other things in common.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes, because there's quite a few Facebook groups here, which I do find really useful, but what I've noticed is that a lady will put out a post, and she might even say, please no judgment, I just want this specific question answered. And you'll get like 100 comments, and it does end up being quite, I don't know, not all the time, but I do sometimes feel like there's so many, obviously everyone's so different with the way they approach motherhood, and there's so many conflicting, opinions, and sometimes these groups can just get quite toxic. And I've seen people, that have ended up just saying like, oh, okay, this isn't really what I was looking for. A lot of people then projecting their opinions, and it just, I don't know if you've seen this, whereas I feel like something that's a little bit more one-to-one, and where you can really connect with people, where you have things in common, and these groups are great. I'm not bashing the groups, but sometimes I see when it comes to women trying to connect and start conversations, and it can sometimes take a wrong turn from the comments I see.
Yeah, because it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's so many women with so many different parenting styles, and so if someone wants to give their opinion, it may then offend another person. So it's a really sticky situation sometimes, when there's so many different opinions. But like you say, just being able to connect with those sort of few mums that have a similar parenting style to yours is quite important, because you know that where they're coming from is a similar mindset to where yours is. And I'm not saying one parenting style is better than the other. It's just that, there are different parenting styles out there, and it's whatever works for you as a mum.
Yeah, and it's, you just want to connect with like-minded people, don't you? And people that you feel comfortable with.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes in a large group, it's difficult just to say, hey, is someone available for a coffee? Because usually, or sometimes, those messages can get lost in all the other questions.
Oh, completely. Yeah, completely. Yeah, it can be really difficult if there's a big group. And I think also, for me anyway, an app like yours works really well, because I really like one-on-one. Like, I really enjoy having that connection, and going for a coffee with just one other person.
Yeah, because you actually get to know the person and get to know them really well.
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know, that's just my personality. I really enjoy that one-on-one. So, there's a time and a place for bigger groups, and there's great events here and mama mornings and things, but to build those sort of, lifelong lasting friendships, it's really nice to have that one-on-one time. And obviously you can get to know someone via WhatsApp now, at home, virtually, like we're all doing. And then once we can, go back into the big wide world, have your coffee dates and go for walks, and just have that little community that is not pre-made for you. You have to sort of be proactive, unless you're lucky enough to have a big family here and they all have kids. You kind of you have to create it for yourself, don't you? It doesn't just happen the minute you get pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. And I think because we sort of go through where we don't really need to make friends again until we become pregnant, because it's such a big change and it's so different to what we've been experiencing till that point, especially when it's your first baby, that you then realize that actually it's not as simple as just finding other mum friends.
Yeah, completely. Well, what I'll do is I'll put the links to download the app in the show notes. So it's available on Android and Apple, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. So I'll include that in the show notes so people can easily download it. But we're going to do a bit of a quick fire round now.
Sure.
So what's your one piece of advice for first-time mummies?
So make time for yourself. It doesn't need to be a really long time in the day. It doesn't have to be an hour and a half. Just try and make some time for yourself and ask for help when you need it. I think as women, sometimes what we feel like we can do everything all the time. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for someone to sort of take care of the baby for a little while so you can have half an hour to yourself and have a nice relaxing bath or whatever it might be. But yeah, make the time for yourself. I think that's really important.
What's one thing you've learned about yourself after becoming a mum?
That I can survive on much less sleep than I thought I could. But no, seriously, I think not to have expectations of myself as a mother and of my daughter, because when you lose and drop those expectations, as soon as I realized that I need to not have expectations, I was a lot more relaxed, and we're it's so much happier as well.
Yeah, I've heard this a lot actually from mums. What's one thing you wish someone had warned you about before becoming a mum?
How challenging the transition would actually be. I don't think, and I'm not sure if someone can warn you of that, but once you experience it, it is quite a big transition. And for me in particular, the sleepless nights, because I was definitely one of those people that needed to have a good night's sleep and would get to bed early. But having to wake up multiple times in the nights was pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's one of the things actually, I'm such a good sleeper and I love my sleep. And it's one of the things I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be an adjustment.
But we all adjust and it's okay in the end.
Yeah, and we survive it. You just get on with it, don't you?
And do you know what? You don't have the sleepless nights forever. I think
exactly
when you're in it, you when you're in it, you really sort of think about when you're going to get that full night's sleep, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, and I think my mum says to me as well, it is amazing what you can do on little sleep. You sort of become used to not having, for a while, you get used to not having that full night's sleep. You sort of just, you adapt. What's your favourite thing about being a mum?
Really getting to know my daughter. So actually really sort of seeing her personality develop. And
did you have not an idea of what she would be like, but did you, when you were pregnant, because this is what I think, did you sort of think about, I wonder what bit of me she's going to have and what bit of her dad and what bit of her grandparents, and did you sort of think about and daydream about what sort of little person she was going to be?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if everyone does, but yes, I totally did. And I think that's where I was coming from with the expectations thing, because I think before you have your baby, you're really focused on, this is the type of mum I want to be, and this is the type of daughter she might be. And I think really letting go of those expectations is what I learned, because it really changed the way I approached motherhood. So yeah, I did do that.
So we just lost connection there for a couple of minutes. So we were just talking about the importance of not having expectations.
Yes. So I think what I was just sort of saying was that it was really important for me to not have those expectations, because when I realized that's when I sort of became more relaxed as a mother. And started to really enjoy motherhood, because I think it's really easy before you give birth to start sort of focusing on what kind of child you want, what kind of mother you want to be. And yeah, that was a really big learning for me.
Yeah, I think for me, I can't wait to see what she's going to look like. This is one of my biggest things. I'm just so excited to see which bits of us she's going to get, and I can't wait. But in terms of her personality, I sort of daydream in a kind of, it's more of a curiosity, just like a kind of, I just wonder, because my husband and I are so similar in some ways, but then so different in others. And for me, it's just more of it's just kind of like a harmless daydream. I'm just so curious and excited to see.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I think for me, that's definitely the best part, really getting to know them and learning about their personality and what they're actually like. I think for me, it was more expectations on myself as a mother rather than my expectations of my daughter. I don't think I had huge expectations of her as a child, and she's so young still. We're only just getting to learn more about her personality. But I think for me, it was more what I would be as a mother that I had to let go of. I had to let go of those feelings.
And I think you have those subconsciously, even if you're not conscious of them. So you might say, yeah, you know, I'm going to go with my instincts and this and that. But we are built with certain beliefs and values, and you, whether you're conscious to it or not, you have an idea of sort of the mum you're going to be, don't you? So you kind of, I definitely know I'm going to have to learn to let go of some of those things, because you just don't know, and you can't control everything. So I'm trying to, and I think maybe the hypnobirthing will help with that as well, some of the tools and the meditation, just to kind of, you know, again, it comes down to that, like, not being so hard on yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a journey, and that's part of the journey. I think, I believe that, you know, that was part of my journey, and it may be part of, you know, someone else's as well. So you've just got to embrace the journey, whatever it looks like.
Exactly. And they say, don't they, when your baby's born, it's not just your baby, it's you as a mum, it's the father, and you go on as much of a journey as your baby does as well. It's all discovery, isn't it? It's all new.
Absolutely. You learn so much about yourself after you have a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I was impatient. I was just generally quite an impatient person, but I didn't realize how impatient I was until I had my baby, until I had my daughter. So yeah, that was something that I had to really work on as well.
Yeah, I'm a very impatient person, so this is probably going to be one of my biggest lessons too. What does motherhood mean to you in 3 words?
So this was quite tough. The 3 I think I've come up with is exhilarating, exhausting, and beautiful.
It's a nice mixture.
I think that's a good explanation of what motherhood actually is. It's amazing, but it is challenging sometimes, and you know, we've just got to embrace it.
And how old is your little girl now?
She's 22 months.
Oh wow. Okay, so she's still, you know, quite little.
Yeah, she's coming up to 2 in a couple of months.
And are you I hate this saying, but the terrible twos, are you seeing a change in her character? How is that transition from sort of baby to toddler going for you?
So I haven't had any major tantrums yet. She's very, I mean, it's nice to see her personality grow. I think this is, for me, I'm really enjoying this age, because they can start to communicate better. You really start to see their personality really shining through. They have an opinion, which is lovely, because of course you want a child that actually has an opinion. So I'm really enjoying it at the moment. Whether the terrible twos will kick in after she turns 2, I'm not sure. I've been told by some moms that it's a real thing, but then you also read that actually it doesn't have to be either. So maybe I'll let you know in 6 months.
Let me know. I think a lot of it, and obviously, you know, I have not been through this yet, but I think a lot of it is they're learning, that they're growing into their characters, and they're still figuring out how to communicate, aren't they? So it's sometimes those huge tantrums you see, they just don't know how to express it in any other way.
So that's what I've read as well, that it is just them trying to figure out their emotions, and the fact that they just don't know what's actually going on emotionally yet.
And also, if you think about it, I mean, we all have days where, for me, sometimes my tolerance level, you can throw everything at me and I'm calm. Other days, you know, I open the milk and I spill it and I'm crying. You know, it's like we all have we have days where we feel like we can conquer the world, and other days where you're just like, I can't do anything today. You know, why can't I get it together? So that's going to be the same for our kids as well, isn't it? And they don't have the emotional maturity to kind of even recognize that.
Exactly. And I don't know why we expect them to behave in inverted commas all the time.
Yeah, because we don't. I certainly don't. You know, some days you just feel you're on top of the world and you're smashing it, and other days you just can't seem to do the simplest of things, and we can get frustrated, and then we take that out on people we love, or that's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I think it's just reminding yourself of these things, when you're in the thick of it. I think
when you're in the moment.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult to remember, but I think if you remind yourself, it's a good way to sort of bring yourself back.
Yeah, I mean, that's all well and good when you're at home, but if you're on a plane, or in a public place, might be quite hard sometimes in the moment to think like that. You're just trying to kind of keep it together. Okay, darling, come on, or in a supermarket, or that all sort of goes out the window, doesn't it? But I think I've heard from friends as well that there might be an element of embarrassment or panic, but you grow with confidence, and you learn how to handle these situations, and you don't even care that there's people around.
Yeah, totally. I think even when the babies, sometimes after I first gave birth, I used to think, oh, she's crying, she's disturbing other people, and you've just got to get past that.
Yeah,
you've just got to focus on your baby or your toddler, and that's what's important at that time. It really doesn't matter what X person next to you thinks or is feeling.
Yeah, completely. Oh, well, Sumayya, thank you so much. I have loved talking to you.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to put all your information in the show notes so people know where to download the app, where to follow you on social media. And yeah, I can't wait to meet some other like-minded mummies and make some new friends myself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumayya. A massive thank you once again to Sumayya for sharing so much with us. You can find links to the Mama app social pages, along with links to download the app, in the show notes below. If you'd like to find out who my guests will be on the next episode of Bumps and Babies, please do follow us on Instagram @LifeSchoolME, where you can keep up to date with all our news and find information on all our amazing guests. And finally, I would be so grateful if you could show some love and please rate, review, and subscribe to Life School ME, the podcast, to help us reach and hopefully inspire more listeners. Thank you for listening to Life School, conversations to inspire action.